Have you ever felt truly safe? Picture this. It's late at night. Your window is cracked just enough to let in the murmur of crickets, the whisper of leaves brushing gently against the glass. But then, imagine something darker slipping through. That crack a shadow, quiet and hungry, drifting toward your bed. Could you feel its presence in time, or would it already be too late? You're listening to 102 Hours, where stories don't just get told. They come alive in the dark. Tonight, we're stepping back in time, down a path paved in nightmares. To October 1989, a door swings open, releasing a monster back into the world. Kenneth McDuff, a man once sentenced to death, walks out a free man, and darkness spills out around him. I'd tell you that you'll probably make it through this story untouched, but honestly, you probably won't survive this, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to 102 Hours, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, why not drop your location and local time in the comments? It's always unsettlingly comforting to see how many sleepless souls there are, scattered around the globe. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let 102 Hours guide you into tonight's journey. You breathe deeply, stepping quietly back to a small town in central Texas, 1989. It feels sleepy and safe here, doesn't it? Houses glow softly from the yellow warmth of porch lights. Cars murmur gently past, headlights briefly illuminating quiet sidewalks. People wave casually, neighbors chatting about football or the weather. It feels like nothing bad could ever really happen here. But tonight, a dark thread winds silently through this peaceful scene. Imagine, for a moment, a prison gate swinging wide, a gate that should never have opened. Kenneth McDuff walks out, breathing air he was never meant to taste again. His footsteps are slow, unhurried. Each one sends tiny ripples through the fragile veil of safety that blankets the sleeping town. Freedom feels good to him. It tingles on his skin, tastes sweet like stolen fruit. But freedom, for Kenneth McDuff, means something very different than it would to you or me. The name alone sends chills. Kenneth McDuff, the infamous broomstick killer, convicted of brutally murdering 3 teenagers in 1966, McDuff had been destined for execution. But fate twisted grotesquely in his favor in 1972, when the Supreme Court briefly halted capital punishment. Suddenly, McDuff's death sentence melted away, becoming merely life imprisonment. Life imprisonment. The irony cuts sharply. That simple legal phrase would soon feel tragically inadequate. You watch him move into the shadows, blending effortlessly into the dark. Does anyone see him slip quietly through the night? Does anyone feel the chill as he passes their window? Or are they all wrapped tightly in dreams, unaware of the nightmare that just woke up? Investigators still question whether anyone fully understood the magnitude of what they'd done, releasing a known predator back into the wild. McDuff's release wasn't just a bureaucratic oversight, it was a ticking clock. A cruel countdown marking the brief interval between his return to society and the first life he would inevitably take. You can almost hear that clock ticking now. Quietly, persistently, each second one step closer to the horror that awaits. The soft sound of distant laughter floats by, a cruel contrast to the terror about to unfold. This is the world. Kenneth McDuff now inhabits a playground filled with potential victims who have no idea he walks among them. Streets they know by heart are now shadowed pathways he can navigate effortlessly. Doors that were never locked tightly enough suddenly become vulnerable portals for the worst kinds of nightmares. This quiet town has become his hunting ground, even though nobody here knows they're already prey. It's strange, isn't it, how quickly normal life can twist into something unrecognizable. The scent of flowers blooming becomes laced with subtle notes of fear. The comforting sound of a neighbor's voice becomes tinged with suspicion. A sudden rustle in the bushes, a shadow crossing the window, these harmless quirks of the night, or signs of something far more sinister. For Kenneth McDuff, the hunt is second nature, a skill honed through years of imprisonment, fantasies, and carefully hidden rage. But for you listening safe behind your screen, it's a chilling reminder of just how thin the line between normalcy and nightmare really is. History is filled with names like his, names that echo with dread, etched permanently in our collective memory. But Kenneth McDuff stands apart, uniquely chilling because he was given a second chance, one he never deserved, and would soon use to devastating effect as he moves deeper into freedom. The moonlight sliding coldly across his features, McDuff contemplates his next move. It won't be long before innocent lives cross his path, lives he views as expendable, mere objects in his twisted game. You shiver slightly, knowing this peaceful scene is only the calm before the storm, and shadow will soon darken doorways, windows, and dreams. There's no turning back now. You've stepped onto this path willingly, but don't fool yourself, it's not you controlling the narrative. McDuff's story unfolds exactly as he chooses, a predator patiently waiting to strike. Hidden in plain sight, he walks quietly, patiently, knowing he's free to begin again, knowing there's nothing and no one that can stop him. Not tonight, not yet. You drift silently through the twilight streets of Rosebud, Texas, a place where memories linger like ghosts beneath aging oak trees. It's one of those towns where secrets hide in plain sight, whispered quietly in the swaying cornfields and behind drawn curtains. This is where Kenneth McDuff's story began, long before his dark shadow swept across headlines. It's the kind of place you pass through without noticing, but today you'll notice everything. Even as a child, McDuff was different, not in a way that immediately alarmed anyone, but in subtle ways that unsettled those paying attention. Teachers at Rosebud High remember him, but not fondly. They recall a tall, wiry boy with a cruel smile and an unsettling air of entitlement. Kenneth was the youngest child of John and Addie McDuff, and like many parents who blindly dote, they saw their son through softened lenses, refusing to believe anything troubling about their precious boy. But you can sense something already stirring beneath that careful denial. Kenneth was spoiled, indulged to the point that he rarely understood the meaning of the word no. A simple refusal could ignite a firestorm of tantrums or revenge-driven violence. Friends soon learned the safest path was to let him have his way. Even adults, neighbors, and authority figures became wary of crossing him. It was safer to turn a blind eye than risk the volatile fury Kenneth could unleash. Can you feel the weight of that early indulgence? Each allowance, every overlooked tantrum, becoming another brick laid carefully along the road to disaster. At school, Kenneth's reputation took a darker turn. He wasn't merely a bully. He thrived on intimidation. He chose targets carefully, honing an instinctual ability to find the vulnerable, the quiet, the easily overlooked. It was never just about asserting dominance, it was about the fear he inspired, a sensation he would eventually become addicted to. It's chilling to think how casually violence began to thread through McDuff's youth. Tales drifted quietly through Rosebud of small animals disappearing from backyards, pets found mysteriously injured or worse. Investigators still question whether these incidents were early signs of Kenneth's growing darkness or simply unfortunate coincidences. But you know as well as anyone that sometimes the most sinister truths lurk just beneath the surface, masked by quiet doubt. Then came the cars, the muscle cars McDuff obsessed over. They weren't just symbols of freedom or independence. For Kenneth, they represented power. Driving dangerously fast, he pushed limits, seemingly daring fate at every turn. It wasn't merely thrill-seeking, it was practice. Each reckless maneuver, every heart-stopping swerve around sharp corners, a rehearsal for darker deeds to come as you watch him speed through those dusty back roads, tires spinning dirt into hazy clouds. You realize he's testing boundaries, probing to see how far he could push before consequences caught up with him. But consequences, unfortunately, rarely touched Kenneth McDuff. Whenever trouble surfaced, his family shielded him, leveraging their modest local influence to sweep issues quietly under the rug. Authorities who might have intervened instead looked away, unwilling to challenge the carefully maintained illusion of normalcy. Consider the depth of entitlement this must have bred in Kenneth, each escape reinforcing the belief that he was untouchable, above the rules that governed everyone else. Imagine what that did to his mind already predisposed to cruelty and domination. Now picture McDuff, older and more confident, wandering the Rosebud streets at dusk. His presence radiates menace like static electricity, invisible yet undeniable. He passes people on sidewalks, their eyes unconsciously drifting downward, avoiding confrontation. It's instinctive, the quiet surrender to a predator who doesn't yet fully grasp what he is, and that, perhaps, is the most unsettling part of his story. Kenneth McDuff wasn't born a monster. He was carefully crafted into one, molded by a combination of indulgence, neglect, and small-town denial. Rosebud quietly shaped the man who would later become the broomstick killer, unaware that the seeds of his horrific future were already planted firmly in its soil. You breathe quietly now, feeling the air around you grow heavy with anticipation. The houses lining these familiar streets seem different, less safe, somehow. Shadows stretch longer, porch lights flicker with uncertainty, and you sense something approaching in the twilight. It's a chilling thought, isn't it, that beneath Rosebud's charming veneer lay the silent acceptance of a growing darkness. Yet towns like Rosebud exist everywhere, communities eager to hide their secrets rather than confront them. It's a troubling truth of human nature. We prefer comforting illusions over harsh realities, and perhaps that's why history has shown us, again and again, how easily monsters are overlooked until it's far too late. And now, standing at the edge of McDuff's youth, you sense the inevitability of tragedy. Every spoiled tantrum, each reckless car ride, all the ignored cruelties culminate in a man who believes he has a right to whatever he desires, even if that desire turns deadly. The past feels closer now, pressing into the present, reminding you how easily innocence can shatter. You see McDuff clearly now, not yet fully formed, but undeniably twisted. His potential for evil simmering beneath a mask of ordinary rebellion. But you sense it won't be long before that mask slips, revealing the full horror beneath. For now, though, you linger a moment longer in this quiet town, listening to the crickets chirp softly, watching porch lights slowly flicker off as people retreat into their homes. You imagine them locking doors, windows, feeling safe behind thin walls. But you know, deep down, that safety is an illusion. one Kenneth McDuff will soon shatter. You glance toward the horizon, sensing the inevitable collision of past and present, innocence and corruption. This is Rosebud, where a monster quietly grew, nurtured by the silence and denial of an entire community. And tonight, that monster is free once again, walking streets that believe themselves safe, hunting for the next victim, perhaps even someone like you. It's August 6, 1966. A warm summer night stretches lazily over central Texas, stars flickering carelessly above as if the universe itself is oblivious to what's about to unfold beneath their distant glow. You can feel the quiet pulse of teenage life humming softly. Young people drifting together in cars and cafes, sharing stories, laughter, whispers. Life feels easy tonight, like it should for teenagers, suspended in that brief bubble of innocence between childhood and adulthood. But beneath that summer calm, Kenneth McDuff's shadow quietly lengthens. He's 20, now older, taller, and more dangerous than ever. He's restless, his predatory instincts sharpened by a lifetime of unchecked entitlement. Tonight, he prowls the quiet roads outside Fort Worth, driving alongside his reluctant companion, Roy Dale Green. Roy's younger, more hesitant, but drawn to Kenneth's dark magnetism, perhaps hoping some twisted sense of protection comes with befriending the devil. Their headlights slice through the darkness, briefly illuminating empty roads lined with tall grass. Kenneth drives a battered Dodge, its engine growling softly as if echoing his mood. He's searching tonight, though even he might not fully know for what. Power, control, dominance, it all blurs together for him, creating an insatiable hunger he doesn't yet fully understand. You can almost sense his tension building, a silent storm gathering strength as he drives. Then, headlights appear. Ahead, a parked car alongside the road, its occupant silhouetted in the soft glow of moonlight. Kenneth slows, his heartbeat quickening. Inside the car sit three teenagers: Robert Brand, his girlfriend, Edna Louise Sullivan, and Robert's cousin, Mark Dunman. They're carefree tonight, lost in conversation, blissfully unaware of the approaching darkness. Kenneth doesn't hesitate. He parks, leaving his engine idling quietly. He steps out, Roy reluctantly trailing behind, aware something is deeply wrong yet unable to pull away. You watch helplessly as Kenneth approaches the teen's car, his tall frame looming ominously in the dim glow of their headlights. He's confident, arrogant, completely certain nothing can touch him. Not tonight, not ever. His voice slices through the quiet night, deceptively calm. It's that very calmness that chills your bones. The predator revealing himself slowly, savoring each terrified reaction. Kenneth pretends to need help, asks a simple question, one designed to disarm his victims, soften their defenses. They hesitate just long enough, confused and cautious. And in that tiny, terrible pause, Kenneth reveals his true nature. A gun appears suddenly in Kenneth's hand, his expression turning cold, eyes reflecting an emptiness that would haunt Roy Dale Green for the rest of his life. Robert and Mark, sensing immediate danger, are forced quickly into the trunk of their own car, panic rising with each breath. Edna Louise is left alone with Kenneth, eyes wide, trembling softly under the weight of the monster's gaze. You can feel her terror, can hear the quiet sobs, the desperate prayers whispered into the night. The evening descends into horror with a chilling inevitability. As Kenneth and Roy drive the captured teens deeper into the Texas countryside, far from any chance of rescue. The roads become rougher, darker, isolated, perfect for Kenneth's intentions. He forces Robert and Mark from the trunk, eyes mercilessly empty as he demands they kneel, begging for their lives. Their pleas fall silently to the grass beneath them. The universe doesn't listen, doesn't care. It feels almost unreal to witness, doesn't it? A moment suspended between nightmare and reality. Kenneth McDuff fires the gun once, then again, each shot echoing through the night, shattering not just silence, but innocence itself. Robert and Mark collapse silently, their lifeless bodies a stark contrast to the soft sway of grass around them. It's a cruelty that's difficult to comprehend, even harder to witness from this safe distance. Yet Kenneth isn't done. His hunger isn't satisfied, his cruelty still craving more. Edna Louise Sullivan remains alive, terrified, watching in stunned disbelief as darkness claims her friends. Kenneth turns toward her, his expression cold, remorseless. She's barely 17, her entire life just beginning, now reduced to pleading eyes and shaking breaths. Investigators still question whether Kenneth McDuff planned these murders, or if some dark impulse took control in that terrible instant. Yet, as you watch, you realize intent hardly matters. The damage is done, innocence forever lost. Edna Louise is forced into the back seat of Kenneth's car, her cries drowned by the sound of the engine roaring to life once more. Kenneth McDuff then does the unimaginable. He takes a broomstick, a mundane, harmless object, and uses it as the instrument of unimaginable cruelty. This chilling detail later brands him the broomstick killer, a nickname that sticks like a grim stain. Eventually, Edna Louise's ordeal ends in the same quiet, unforgiving landscape that claimed her companions. Kenneth and Roy leave her broken body behind, returning quietly into the night, their crime hidden beneath the cover of darkness, a nightmare waiting patiently to be discovered by the waking world. It's surreal, isn't it? How swiftly ordinary nights become tragic memories etched permanently into history. The murders of Robert Brand, Mark Dunman, and Edna Louise Sullivan stunned Texas not merely for their brutality, but for their randomness. Crimes like this shattered a sense of security, transforming peaceful towns into landscapes haunted by shadows and whispers. You breathe quietly now, trying to shake loose the weight of what you've witnessed. It's hard to grasp how easily life shifts from peaceful normalcy to unspeakable horror. How fragile safety really is. Kenneth McDuff, a spoiled bully from Rosebud, now stands irreversibly transformed into a murderer, his shadow stretching darker, deeper. He believes he's invincible, protected somehow by fate or luck. But you sense this is only the beginning, that his darkness will deepen, grow colder, spread further, as you stand silently beneath the indifferent stars, their cold glow casting pale light over the scene. You know this night marks a point of no return. Kenneth McDuff has crossed a line from which there's no going back. But even now, he doesn't sense it. Not tonight, not yet. Picture yourself standing in the hushed hallways of a prison in 1972. Concrete walls rise cold and grey around you, sealing in despair, muffling even the smallest whispers of hope. This place is supposed to be the end of the road of final stop for monsters like Kenneth McDuff, but suddenly, inexplicably, a door creaks open. You hear it, don't you? That faint squeak, barely audible, slicing through the quiet like a razor. The door shouldn't be opening, but it is. And now, a nightmare quietly steps through it free once again. It's been just 6 years since the brutal murders that shook Texas. McDuff, sentenced to death in 1966, had been confined to death row, where society intended him to remain until justice was served in its ultimate form. But life, as you know, has a cruel sense of irony. On June 29, 1972, the Supreme Court issues a ruling, Furman v. George, declaring the death penalty unconstitutional, at least in its current form. And suddenly, all across the country, execution chambers go silent. For most prisoners, this ruling means life sentences replace imminent execution. But for Kenneth McDuff, it feels more like a twisted reprieve and escape route handed down by fate itself. Imagine the moment McDuff first learns he'll no longer face death. Feel the chill, the quiet smirk spreading across his face as he realizes the universe has once again twisted in his favor. He doesn't see this as mercy or grace, he sees it as confirmation, proof of his untouchability. Texas authorities, reluctant yet bound by law, commute McDuff's death sentence to life imprisonment. To many outside, this seems fairer compromise, ensuring justice without execution. But to those who understood the depth of McDuff's depravity, it felt like a betrayal, a terrible mistake quietly made behind closed doors. Investigators still question whether authorities truly recognized the gravity of their decision at the time. After all, McDuff wasn't just another convict, he was a cold, unrepentant predator whose monstrous actions had already shown the limits of his humanity. But in the eyes of the law, he was now simply a life prisoner who suddenly had the faint, terrifying possibility of parole. As you listen to this, it feels like an impossible thought, doesn't it? Kenneth McDuff, eligible for parole. How could society allow a monster back into its midst, even theoretically? Yet here he is, quietly moving from death row into the general prison population, his sentence reduced from death to life, his status dangerously softened. In prison, McDuff adapts quickly. It's unsettling, really, how smoothly he slides into routines, manipulating circumstances to his advantage. Guards sense the threat beneath his quiet demeanor, yet he behaves just carefully enough to avoid serious trouble. His cruelty simmers quietly below the surface, suppressed only by necessity, not remorse. Other inmates avoid McDuff instinctively. They sense the predatory nature behind those cold eyes, the menace lingering behind carefully chosen words. But despite their instincts, some prisoners and guards underestimate him, mistaking quiet compliance for genuine rehabilitation. They're blind to the calculated patience beneath McDuff's calm exterior, predator awaiting the right moment to strike again. Through the 1970s and 80s, McDuff quietly petitions for parole multiple times. Each rejection irritates him, sparks a carefully hidden fury, but he never lets it show. Instead, he learns to play the system, gaining favor by completing courses, maintaining exemplary behavior, feigning remorse. He becomes skilled at projecting what the parole board wants to see, an illusion, carefully crafted to mask the truth beneath. Can you imagine the parole board meetings? How smoothly McDuff must have spoken. How convincingly he assured them of his reform. Feel the chill now, knowing each gentle word, each polite smile, was carefully calculated to erase memories of the violence he once committed. And slowly, incredibly, it began to work. By the late 1980s, attitudes towards incarceration were shifting nationwide. Overcrowded prisons and budget pressures led authorities to release certain prisoners, even those previously deemed dangerous. The tide of criminal justice began to prioritize rehabilitation over incarceration. A philosophy well-intended but tragically flawed in its application to McDuff. Quietly, beneath layers of bureaucracy and misguided intentions, McDuff's parole. Approval moves closer. Investigators still question how much corruption, negligence, or sheer naivete played into these decisions. Records suggest a mix of bureaucratic incompetence and subtle manipulation. McDuff, leveraging family influence and legal technicalities, quietly eroding the barriers keeping him imprisoned. You can almost feel the tension building, can't you? Each parole hearing inches him closer to freedom, and each small compromise, each concession, becomes another brick silently removed from society's protective wall. Then, finally, unbelievably, in October 1989, it happens. The parole board grants Kenneth McDuff his freedom. They open the prison. Gaita gate never meant to swing outward for a man like him, and watch him step back into the world. Consider the gravity of that moment. Kenneth McDuff, a convicted killer, sentenced initially to death for crimes so brutal they left permanent scars on communities, now walks free, breathing air that should never have filled his lungs again. The magnitude of this mistake is almost impossible to fully grasp, a ripple effect that would soon become a tidal wave of tragedy. Authorities later claimed ignorance, expressing shock at McDuff's release, conveniently ignoring warning signs scattered throughout his incarceration. But you sense the truth. McDuff wasn't freed by accident or oversight alone. He was freed by collective denial, by a flawed system desperate to believe that rehabilitation could heal even the deepest wounds. Tonight, you stand at the edge of the prison gates, watching Kenneth McDuff walk slowly into the darkness. It feels like watching a nightmare unfold in slow motion, one you can neither prevent nor escape. He disappears into the shadows, leaving behind only silence and quiet dread, because you know exactly what comes next. The countdown clock has already restarted, and Kenneth McDuff's monstrous instincts, buried temporarily beneath forced politeness and feigned reform, now rise again, sharpened by years of waiting. Freedom, for Kenneth McDuff, is merely an opportunity, a chance to unleash the darkness he's carefully hidden. And tonight, with the gate finally open, there's no force left powerful enough to stop him. Not tonight, not yet. You stand now, in October 1989, feeling the autumn breeze gently stir around you, carrying whispers of falling leaves and distant laughter. For most people, it's just another ordinary day, a day filled with routine and small moments of comfort. But beneath this calm, a deeper darkness quietly unfolds. Kenneth McDuff is free. How does a convicted killer, a man whose original punishment was death, find himself walking casually down sunlit sidewalks once again, blending into society as if nothing ever happened? It seems impossible, absurd even. Yet here he is, strolling unnoticed past neighbors, shoppers, families. They see a tall man, quiet but seemingly harmless. They don't sense the danger radiating silently from him. They don't feel the shadow he casts, stretching invisibly across their peaceful lives. And perhaps most troubling of all, neither did the authorities who approved his release. In the months and years leading up to McDuff's parole, a tangled web of bureaucracy, incompetence, and quiet corruption quietly converged. Overcrowded prisons had strained the Texas criminal justice system to a breaking point. Prisons intended for 50,000 inmates were packed with nearly twice that number. Budgets tightened, officials scrambled, and the parole system strained beneath. The weight, you can almost hear the whispers from behind closed doors. See stacks of paperwork shuffled hastily, cases reviewed too quickly, risks ignored. It was easier, quieter, to grant parole to offenders who seemed reformed, who knew how to say exactly what the parole boards wanted to hear. And Kenneth McDuff, unfortunately, was a skilled manipulator. During his imprisonment, McDuff learned exactly how to play the game. He completed classes, maintained a spotless disciplinary record, and projected quiet remorse, carefully calibrating his responses to questions about his past. Each parole hearing brought him closer to freedom as he convinced officials he posed no further threat. But something darker also lurked beneath. The bureaucratic mazy something investigators still question to this day. How much influence did McDuff's family wield behind the scenes? How many favors quietly exchanged hands? How many warnings ignored, brushed aside in favor of convenience or complacency? It's uncomfortable, isn't it? Considering how many small compromises may have led directly to the decision that unleashed McDuff on an unsuspecting world. Yet, it happened. On October 11th, 1989, after 23 years behind bars, Kenneth McDuff was quietly released from prison, stepping into the sunlight once more a free man. The decision went unnoticed by the public, hidden behind legal technicalities and layers of secrecy. But beneath the quiet return to freedom lay the foundation for a tragedy few saw coming. It didn't take long for McDuff's true nature to resurface. He moved briefly back to Rosebud, but whispers and sideways glances followed him everywhere, even among those unwilling to speak openly. Soon, feeling suffocated by suspicion, he drifted to Temple, Texas, eager to find a new hunting ground. You see him now, don't you? Strolling calmly down Temple streets, outwardly calm yet internally seething with restless energy. Freedom to McDuff isn't simply life outside bars, it's the thrill of absolute power, dominance, the ability to stalk and strike at will. Prison hadn't changed that desire. It had only sharpened it, deepened his hunger, and authorities. They saw nothing, at least, nothing they chose to acknowledge. No surveillance, no monitoring. They turned McDuff loose without a second glance, trusting blindly in rehabilitation, or perhaps simply unwilling to face their mistake. In Temple, McDuff quickly settles into a pattern of quiet menace. He finds temporary work, blending in, speaking softly, acting like someone who's simply grateful for a second chance. Yet beneath the mask, he's already plotting, watching, waiting. He knows exactly what he wants, what he always wanted. Victims chosen at his convenience. At his mercy. It's chilling, isn't it? How quietly and effortlessly evil can disguise itself in the ordinary. McDuff eats at local diners, shops at grocery stores, chats briefly with neighbors, the very image of calm normalcy. He's the predator hiding in plain sight, a monster hidden behind a friendly nod or a carefully chosen word. In hindsight, it's easy to wonder how the system failed so disastrously, but in truth, systems rarely fail spectacularly in an instant. Instead, they crumble slowly, quietly, one compromise at a time, one ignored warning after another. Kenneth McDuff's release wasn't merely a singular mistake. It was the cumulative result of countless small errors, an inevitable consequence of institutional blindness and denial. Yet, tonight, you can feel the clock quietly ticking again, each second bringing him closer to his next victim. Investigators still question how quickly McDuff began killing again after release, but records soon confirmed the terrifying truth. Within mere days of leaving prison, he had already struck duts. A difficult fact to grasp, isn't it? How quickly freedom can become tragedy. How fragile society's protections truly are when faced with a determined predator. Tonight, Kenneth McDuff roams freely, his past, a distant echo, easily ignored by authorities, while his future holds violence and death for those unlucky enough to cross his path. The system that freed him now watches helplessly or simply refuses to watch at all as he prepares to claim more innocent lives. You stand in the fading autumn sunlight, feeling an unsettling chill despite the warmth. You see clearly now the intersection of negligence and tragedy, the thin line between safety and horror. McDuff's parole wasn't merely a procedural error. It was a doorway opened willingly, blindly, leading directly to further bloodshed. The sun dips lower, shadows lengthening, darkness settling quietly over the streets. McDuff is already hunting, already watching potential victims move unknowingly through their daily routines. Each step he takes feels deliberate, purposefully, moment bringing him closer to his next attack. You sense it, don't you? The quiet dread, the inevitable approach of tragedy. Kenneth McDuff's release is no longer just a bureaucratic mistake. It's a living, breathing nightmare stalking silently through Texas towns, waiting to claim its next victim. And tonight, with authorities still blind and citizens unaware, there's nothing and no one capable of stopping him. Not tonight, not yet. The soft glow of streetlights reflects gently on rain-soaked pavement, casting pools of amber that ripple softly beneath your feet. It's October 1989, just days after Kenneth McDuff's parole. Temple, Texas, feels quietly restless tonight. You sense the shift in the air, a subtle unease that people feel but can't quite name. But soon enough, everyone will know exactly what it is. Kenneth McDuff wastes no time. Freedom for him is nothing but opportunity, and he's eager to reclaim the terrible power taken from him 2 decades ago. He's barely had time to unpack the meager belongings carried from prison, yet his hunger already grows impatient, restless. Tonight, it demands satisfaction. You walk softly through the darkened streets, past shuttered stores and quiet houses. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks nervously, its voice echoing with a sense of foreboding. You feel it, don't you? That familiar instinct, the ancient primal awareness that something isn't right. Her name is Seraphia Parker. She's 31 years old, friendly, full of life. The kind of person neighbors adore her, kind who smiles brightly, waves from her porch, and laughs easily. Seraphia doesn't know Kenneth McDuff. She doesn't know that the quiet, polite man recently paroled nearby harbors unspeakable darkness. How could she? For Seraphia, tonight is just another night. Ordinary in its comforting routine, but ordinary will soon turn tragic. Kenneth spots her casually leaving a convenience store, chatting briefly with friends, laughter ringing softly into the autumn evening. McDuff quietly watches, his dark eyes tracking her movements from behind the windshield of his car, calculating, waiting patiently for the moment to strike. His pulse quickens, anticipation tightening his chest as Seraphia begins walking alone along the dimly lit road. You see him now, don't you? Following quietly, slowly, headlights dimmed. It's unsettling how effortlessly predators blend into their surroundings. How invisible danger becomes when masked behind a carefully crafted facade of normalcy. And Seraphia, sadly, senses nothing not. Yet, minutes later, McDuff moves swiftly. He offers her a ride, feigning kindness. Perhaps Seraphia hesitates briefly, instincts whispering faint warnings that she quickly dismisses. It's a familiar face, after all. Someone she's seen around town, harmless seeming. And isn't that always the danger? The predator whose mask is so perfect, you don't even see the threat until it's too late. She accepts his offer, sliding into the passenger seat, oblivious to the monster she's just welcomed into her life. Investigators still question exactly how McDuff persuaded Sarafia into his car. Was it charm, manipulation, or simple trust that McDuff exploited effortlessly? But whatever the method, Sarafia soon realizes her mistake. The car doors lock quietly, the gentle click signaling the end of innocence. Hours later, Sarafia's body is discovered near Temple, a grim testament to McDuff's enduring cruelty. Authorities find her quietly discarded, her life stolen brutally. Swiftly, McDuff had reclaimed the violent power he craved, leaving behind not just sorrow but a terrifying realization. He wasn't merely capable of murder, again he was eager for it. Sarafia Parker's death sends shockwaves quietly through the community. Rumors swirl rapidly. Anxiety tightens like a coil around Temple's residents. Whispers of a predator loose in their midst, spreading like wildfire. Yet, for reasons difficult to comprehend, authorities fail to connect her murder to McDuff. His recent parole quietly slips under their radar, ignored or dismissed as coincidence. Consider the chilling implications of that oversight. McDuff had murdered again, openly, brazenly, mere days after release. Yet authorities failed to see the obvious. Bureaucratic blindness, complacency, denial whatever the cause. The result is clear. McDuff remains free, and the nightmare continues. As you walk through Temple now, the mood is markedly changed. Porch lights stay lit longer, doors lock earlier, neighbors speak softly in hushed tones. The comfortable sense of security evaporates overnight, replaced by suspicion, paranoia. Everyone wonders silently who might be next, their eyes quietly scanning shadows, flinching at sudden noises. You feel that tension, don't you? How quickly a community's trust disintegrates under the weight of fear. The knowledge that a killer walks openly among them gnaws relentlessly at their peace. And yet, despite the mounting dread, authorities remain hesitant, reluctant to face the truth staring directly back at them. McDuff, meanwhile, moves calmly, unbothered by suspicion or fear. He feels powerful, invincible, each successful crime, reinforcing his belief that he's untouchable. You sense his quiet arrogance now, growing steadily stronger with each moment authorities overlook him. Sarafia Parker's death was more than tragedy, it was a grim message, a chilling preview of what lay ahead. Her murder served notice, quietly reminding Temple, and soon all of Texas, that Kenneth McDuff's release was no bureaucratic oversight. It was a doorway opened directly into darkness. It's unsettling, isn't it? The ease with which one monstrous individual can unravel the fabric of an entire community. McDuff didn't merely kill Sarafia, he murdered trust, innocence, safety itself, leaving behind only fear, suspicion, and unanswered questions. Yet, still, authorities remain blind intentionally or otherwise, allowing McDuff precious freedom to continue his rampage. As you walk beneath Temple's streetlights now, you see shadows stretching further, deeper. Darkness creeps quietly into places it never belonged before: homes, streets, hearts. Kenneth McDuff's freedom, once merely shocking, now feels incomprehensible, dangerous beyond imagining. Tonight, the quiet hum of distant traffic feels ominous. Every rustle in the darkness a possible threat. You glance quickly over your shoulder, feeling vulnerable, exposed to sensation Temple residents now share nightly. their innocence forever shattered by a single act of cruel violence. Kenneth McDuff's monstrous shadow grows steadily longer, deeper, consuming more of the safety once taken for granted. He remains quietly at large, watching, waiting patiently for another chance to strike. And tonight, in Temple and beyond, residents lock doors carefully, pull curtains tight, whisper silent prayers, hoping desperately to avoid becoming the next victim claimed by the monster released from prison, a monster they mistakenly believed could be contained. Yet, as you know, Kenneth McDuff has only begun to unleash the darkness within. And tonight, no one will stop him. Not tonight, not yet. It's a chilly autumn evening in 1991, and the city of Waco, Texas, hums quietly beneath the purple sky. Streetlights buzz gently overhead, illuminating sidewalks where people hurry home, eager to slip behind closed doors, escaping the cold, and the subtle anxiety now gripping their community. Because tonight, something feels off, doesn't it? A quiet unease lingers in the air, a subtle shiver that even the brisk wind can't fully explain. Kenneth McDuff has quietly slipped into Waco, searching again, hunger gnawing insistently inside him. He's restless now, no longer satisfied with careful planning or waiting patiently. His confidence has grown alarmingly, emboldened by each crime committed without consequence. Tonight, he hunts openly, arrogance making him reckless, dangerous in new and terrifying ways. The city feels safe enough, at least from the outside. Waco's residents know little about McDuff's shadowy presence, unaware that the predator prowling their streets has already claimed multiple lives since his release. Authorities still haven't connected the dots, his parole records forgotten or ignored, his crimes dismissed as unrelated tragedies. But tonight, you can feel the truth approaching, can't you? The illusion of safety slowly unraveling beneath McDuff's calculating stare. Brenda Thompson and Regina Moore are close friends, sharing laughter and stories, their lives intertwined in small joys and simple routines. Brenda, vivacious and outgoing, and Regina, quiet but fiercely loyal. Both women feel safe in Waco, protected by familiarity, friends, family. But Kenneth McDuff sees them differently, as prey, targets chosen casually, brutally. You sense his presence as he silently stalks through Waco's streets, scanning sidewalks, alleys, parking lots. He's patient, yet eager, his confidence dangerously high, believing he's invisible to justice. On October 10th, 1991, Brenda Thompson's path crosses McDuff's at a quiet intersection beneath the amber glow of a street. Brenda is walking home, unaware of the man quietly following, his shadow blending effortlessly into hers. Moments later, McDuff makes his move, forcing Brenda into his vehicle with chilling efficiency. Her pleas go unheard, swallowed by the night. Moore disappears a few days later, similarly snatched from Waco's quiet streets. Like Brenda, Regina senses nothing until it's too late, trusting familiar roads and routines that suddenly become traps, exploited ruthlessly by McDuff. That disappearances spread anxiety swiftly through Waco. Friends and family search desperately, posting flyers, calling out names into the darkness, their voices echoing sadly, answered only by silence. Authorities remain baffled, their investigation stalled by confusion, misinformation, and McDuff's chilling ability to remain unnoticed. Investigators still question why McDuff chose Brenda and Regina. Was it simple convenience, a chance encounter, or something darker instinct guiding his terrible selections? Yet, the result remains the same. Two vibrant lives, stolen quietly, swiftly, without hesitation, it's troubling, isn't it? How easily evil slips unnoticed through familiar spaces, hiding behind masks of quiet normalcy. McDuff isn't monstrous. In appearance or behavior, he's polite, quiet, careful not to draw attention. Yet beneath that facade lurks unimaginable cruelty, perfectly camouflaged, deadly in its precision. Days pass quietly in Waco, anxiety tightening its grip with every unanswered question. People lock doors earlier, speak softly, glance nervously at passing strangers. Trust dissolves quietly beneath the weight of uncertainty. Suspicion poisons neighborly interactions, relationships once built on comfort and routine. Yet authorities remain stalled, despite mounting disappearances and growing fear. No one connects the dots, no one sees Kenneth McDuff quietly slipping through their fingers. Victim after victim disappearing beneath his cold, calculating gaze. You sense it now, don't you? The quiet horror of a community unraveling. Security evaporating beneath the relentless gaze of a predator no one recognizes. Weeks later, Brenda and Regina's bodies are quietly discovered, hidden carefully along isolated roads outside Waco. Discarded without mercy. Their deaths send shockwaves throughout Texas, shaking public trust, sparking anger and confusion. Yet still, authorities fail to recognize the deadly pattern, McDuff's shadow looming invisibly over their investigation. In hindsight, the signs were there, weren't they? Small details overlooked, warnings ignored, quiet whispers dismissed. McDuff had murdered repeatedly since his parole, yet remained free, invisible behind a mask of quiet normalcy. The city now struggles quietly with grief, fear, and mounting anger. Brenda and Regina were known, loved women whose lives mattered deeply, whose deaths cry out silently for justice. But justice feels distant, unreachable, obscured by bureaucracy, incompetence, and tragic oversight. Tonight, you walk quietly through Waco, feeling that painful uncertainty. Residents eye each other warily, haunted by the thought that a killer moves invisibly among them. The quiet chatter in cafes and bars now carries an edge, a subtle suspicion permeating every interaction. Trust feels impossible, shattered irreparably beneath McDuff's quiet rampage. Yet McDuff himself remains unfazed. Arrogance clouds his judgment, fuels his belief that he's untouchable. Each new crime emboldens him further, his confidence dangerously high, blind to the slow gathering of evidence, finally drawing authorities closer to his trail. But tonight, in Waco, authorities remain frustratingly blind, unable to stop him. And you, listening quietly, watching shadows stretch long beneath flickering streetlights, know the horror is far from over. Brenda Thompson and Regina Moore's deaths aren't isolated tragedies, they're signals, quiet warnings of worse to come. It's unsettling, isn't it? To consider how icily a predator moves unnoticed among us, how vulnerable even the safest communities become when faced with determined evil. Tonight, Waco quietly mourns, desperate for answers that remain elusive. Kenneth McDuff continues to stalk silently, invisible to justice, preparing quietly for his next victim, another innocent life claimed by a monster released into the unsuspecting world. You feel the weight of this truth, don't you? How delicate safety is, how quickly peace shatters beneath the careful footsteps of a predator hidden in plain sight. And tonight, beneath Waco's gentle streetlights, Kenneth McDuff quietly waits, knowing he remains unstoppable, at least for now. Not tonight, not yet. It's December 29th, 1991. and the holidays gently wind down in Austin, Texas. The soft glow of festive lights still twinkles faintly along storefronts, remnants of a cheerful season lingering in windows. You can almost hear the distant hum of late-night traffic, the laughter drifting quietly from cozy bars downtown. But beneath the calm exterior of this festive city, a darker story unfolds. Kenneth McDuff quietly prowls once again, drawn now to Austin's bustling energy, a predator slipping unnoticed through crowded streets, eyes scanning for the perfect moment to strike. Tonight, he targets Colleen Reed. Colleen is a vibrant 28 accountant, known among friends as kind-hearted, fiercely independent, and cautious by nature. She's just finished a quiet evening out and stops briefly at a car wash near her home. It feels safe enough, brightly lit, familiar, comfortingly routine. But as she stands beneath the fluorescent glow, cleaning her car, she has no idea that darkness watches quietly, hungrily, from the shadows. Kenneth McDuff sits quietly in his vehicle, observing. His heartbeat quickens, eyes narrowing slightly. Colleen doesn't notice the car idling softly nearby, doesn't sense the danger quietly closing in. How could she? It's the kind of ordinary night you experience countless times without thinking twice, but tonight, ordinary transforms suddenly into terror. McDuff makes his move swiftly, boldly, stepping out of the car wash shadows, approaching Colleen with terrifying purpose. In seconds, he overpowers her, silencing her cries, forcing her into his vehicle. Chilling abduction, witnessed briefly by startled bystanders who freeze helplessly, stunned by the suddenness, unsure what they've just seen. Investigators still question what drove McDuff to choose such a visible, high-risk location for his attack. Was it sheer confidence, arrogance, or the twisted thrill of terrorizing a community openly? Yet whatever his motivation, Colleen Reed disappears into the night, captured by a monster whose cruelty grows bolder with each passing day. You sense the shockwave rippling immediately through Austin, don't you? Word of Colleen's abduction spreads swiftly, neighbors reacting with fear, grief, disbelief. Her family, friends, and co-workers rally desperately, pleading publicly for help, faces etched with anguish. Authorities respond swiftly, yet confusion, panic, and uncertainty stall their efforts initially. Eyewitness accounts offer fragmented clues, descriptions of a tall man, glimpses of a dark sedan fleeing the sign, but nothing clear enough to point directly to McDuff. Authorities cast wide nets, hoping desperately for a breakthrough that refuses to materialize. Colleen Reed's abduction feels chillingly different from previous disappearances. It's brazen, public, horrifyingly random, striking directly at the heart of the city's sense of safety. Austin, once comforted by its vibrant nightlife and welcoming streets, now trembles quietly beneath the shadow cast by McDuff's bold crime. Days turn into weeks, each hour deepening community dread. People glance nervously around car washes, gas stations, parking lots, ordinary spaces suddenly charged with fear. The illusion of safety shatters quietly, permanently, replaced by suspicion and uncertainty. Citizens demand answers, justice, reassurances authorities simply can't provide, not yet. It's painful to imagine, isn't it, how swiftly security dissolves beneath the pressure of a single shocking crime. Kenneth McDuff, meanwhile, watches calmly as the city panics. He revels quietly in the fear spreading beneath his shadow. Yet, beneath his arrogance lurks a subtle anxiety. He knows his recklessness has brought new, intense scrutiny. Investigators now scour records, sift through clues, piece together details connecting previously unrelated disappearances. You sense authorities finally waking up, don't you? Realizing, perhaps for the first time, how deeply and tragically they've misunderstood McDuff's threat. Each new victim, each fresh tragedy, clarifies the predator's pattern, focusing authorities' attention sharply on the elusive monster lurking among them. Yet, frustratingly, concrete evidence remains just beyond reach. Authorities circle closer to identifying McDuff, but still haven't connected all the dots. Colleen Reed's disappearance continues, haunting Austin, leaving authorities desperate, communities terrified, and justice frustratingly elusive. You walk quietly now along Austin's anxious streets, feeling the nervous energy buzzing beneath the city's carefully maintained calm. You sense the weight of unanswered questions pressing relentlessly. How could authorities let this happen? Why hadn't anyone recognized McDuff's threat sooner? Yet hindsight offers little comfort, especially tonight, with Colleen still missing, and her family suffering quietly, hoping against the odds. People watch news broadcasts nervously, attend vigils, whisper quiet prayers, hoping desperately for Colleen's safe return, a miracle becoming increasingly unlikely. Investigators still question exactly how long Colleen survived after her abduction. Evidence later suggests her ordeal was tragically brief, marked as cruelty, leaving little room for hope or mercy. But for now, authorities remain stalled, searching frantically, while McDuff quietly slips away, confident in his continued invisibility. He's proven again that nowhere is safe, not even brightly lit car washes or busy streets. His shadow darkens every corner of Austin. Paranoia now woven into the fabric of daily life. Tonight, you sense the city shifting, no longer comfortable, no longer confident. Colleen Reed's abduction forces residents to reconsider their trust in the safety they once took for granted. They wonder quietly who might be next, glancing nervously at strangers, locking doors earlier, pulling curtains tighter. Kenneth McDuff thrives on this fear, quietly savoring the power he wields. Yet, beneath his calm exterior, he senses a subtle change, the tightening noose of investigation drawing quietly closer, a shadow finally pursuing him. He's still arrogant, still confident, but the ground beneath his feet now feels slightly less stable. But tonight, in Austin, Colleen Reed remains heartbreakingly absent. The community mourns quietly, haunted by the thought of a predator moving freely through their lives. Authorities scramble desperately, searching for clues they still struggle to piece together clearly. Yet justice remains frustratingly out of reach, hidden somewhere just beyond sight. Tonight, you stand quietly beneath Austin's lingering holiday lights, feeling their cheerful glow oddly unsettling. The sense of safety, once comforting, now feels fragile, temporary. Icily shattered beneath the careful footsteps of a monster. And Kenneth McDuff, quietly confident, remains out there watching, waiting patiently, ready to strike again. Tonight, there's no stopping him. Not tonight, not yet. It's February 1992, and the usually quiet streets surrounding the campus of Texas State Technical College in Waco are still and hushed beneath a pale, wintry sky. Trees stand stark against the gray afternoon, their skeletal branches casting faint shadows along empty sidewalks. You feel the solitude here, don't you? A calm, ordinary day quietly slipping by, deceptively peaceful. Yet tonight, beneath the quiet surface, something darker quietly moves. Kenneth McDuff has returned to familiar territory. drawn again to Waco's quiet spaces. He prowls restlessly, feeling both powerful and anxious, arrogance growing steadily but tempered by the subtle realization that authorities now watch more carefully than before. Still, the hunger within him is relentless, insatiable. He must feed it again, despite the risks. His target this time is Valencia Joshua, a 22-year-old student, bright-eyed and ambitious, studying to build a future that now hangs delicately. Tragically, in the balance, Valencia moves through campus easily, unaware that her ordinary routine quietly places her directly in McDuff's path. You feel the heartbreaking innocence, don't you? The vulnerability of someone simply living, unaware that danger now quietly stalks her steps. McDuff observes her movements carefully. His pulse quickens, familiar excitement stirring beneath the surface as he quietly chooses his moment. Investigators later question whether he specifically targeted Valencia or simply chose her randomly. Another dark impulse acted upon without hesitation. But tonight, intentions hardly matter. Only outcomes remain tragically certain. Valencia Joshua disappears silently, swiftly, taken from the very campus meant to protect and nurture dreams, not extinguish them. Her disappearance sends ripples of quiet terror through Waco and the college community. Authorities respond with urgency, painfully aware that each missing person deepens community anxiety, fueling suspicion, frustration, and fear. Posters bearing Valencia's bright smile appear on campus walls, street corners, storefront windows. Desperate pleas from family and friends echoing softly into a community already shaken deeply, yet, at first, evidence remains frustratingly scarce. Investigators piece together Valencia's last known movements, classes attended, friends she spoke to, hallways walked quietly before vanishing, but initial clues reveal little. Kenneth McDuff, skilled in his cruelty, leaves few immediate traces. Authorities search desperately, feeling the heavy weight of previous unsolved disappearances now pressing urgently upon them. It's haunting, isn't it? The sense of quiet dread permeating each new missing persons report, each poster taped to streetlights or campus buildings. Valencia Joshua's absence now becomes an aching symbol of systemic failure to protect innocent lives. Failure to recognize danger hiding plainly in sight. As days pass, whispers intensify, paranoia quietly tightening around campus. Students walk quickly, cautiously, eyes darting toward shadows, suspicious of unfamiliar faces. The comforting routine of college life dissolves slowly, replaced by quiet fear and tense, whispered conversations. Authorities sense growing anger, frustration, and grief. The community demands answers, desperate to restore a fragile sense of safety, and yet, investigators remain stalled initially, struggling to link Valencia Joshua's disappearance clearly to McDuff. His ability to blend into ordinary spaces, quietly slipping away without witnesses or suspicion, frustrates efforts to pinpoint his involvement conclusively. But beneath this stalled investigation, something quietly shifts. Authorities begin connecting scattered clues, linking disappearances previously seen as isolated events. Valencia's tragic absence, following closely on the heels of other unsolved cases, forces investigators to confront uncomfortable truths. Patterns emerge slowly but undeniably, tracing a shadowy outline of the predator stalking Central Texas. Kenneth McDuff senses this quiet tightening, aware now of the subtle pressure slowly surrounding him. He remains arrogant, confident in his ability to evade capture, yet anxiety begins quietly seeping into his thoughts. The careful mask of calm he's worn for years now shows. Subtle cracks, small but significant hints of vulnerability authorities might soon exploit. Yet tonight, Valencia Joshua's fate remains heartbreakingly uncertain. Weeks pass quietly. Her absence felt deeply by friends and family, a haunting silence echoing through classrooms, hallways, and the campus grounds she once walked freely. You can feel that emptiness, can't you? The aching absence of someone taken violently, cruelly, without warning. The terrible knowledge that somewhere in quiet shadows, Kenneth McDuff continues stalking, invisible to justice yet visible to all who now live in fear. Eventually, authorities tragically discover Valencia's body, discarded carelessly outside. The city another life claimed cruelly by McDuff's growing brutality. This discovery confirms investigators' worst fears, crystallizing suspicion into quiet certainty. Central Texas now faces a serial predator whose freedom mocks justice and whose arrogance grows dangerously unchecked. The revelation spreads rapidly through Waco, stirring renewed outrage, grief, and fear. Valencia Joshua's death underscores painfully the failure of authorities to act decisively sooner. A chilling reminder of the stakes involved when bureaucracy overlooks predators like McDuff. Tonight, you stand quietly beneath the fading afternoon sky, feeling the weight of that failure pressing heavily. Campus life feels irrevocably changed, its comforting sense of security shattered by Valencia's murder. Students, faculty, community members struggle quietly, processing grief, suspicion, anger, wondering how many lives could have been spared had authorities acted sooner, seeing clearly the predator among them. Yet Kenneth McDuff remains quietly hidden, confident still that he can evade capture despite growing scrutiny. He walks Waco streets, perhaps sensing eyes now watching, whispers quietly trailing behind him. But tonight, he remains out of reach, free, dangerous, ready to strike again. You feel it clearly now, the tragedy of a system designed to protect yet crippled by bureaucracy, denial, and oversight. Valencia Joshua's death signals the urgent necessity for action, investigation intensifying quietly as authorities finally connect the predator's terrible crimes. But for now, Kenneth McDuff remains quietly at large, walking freely beneath shadows, waiting patiently for another victim. And tonight, you sense the inevitability of further tragedy, a community forced to live anxiously, knowing justice remains elusive and danger quietly lingers just beyond sight. McDuff's shadow stretches deeper, darker, consuming more innocent lives with each passing day, and tonight, no one has stopped him. Not tonight, not yet. It's March 1st, 1992. A quiet, early morning hangs heavily over Waco, Texas, the sky tinted a soft, uncertain gray. People move slowly, rubbing sleep from tired eyes, oblivious to the tension quietly gathering beneath this calm surface. Yet tonight, this peaceful routine shatters once more, leaving behind fresh scars that won't soon fade. Kenneth McDuff feels restless again, driven by the relentless hunger that's become his trademark. Confidence and arrogance blur now into reckless boldness, his crimes growing more audacious, increasingly careless. He senses the quiet pressure of authorities circling slowly closer, yet still believes himself untouchable, a predator whose shadow looms confidently over communities, mocking justice. His next target is Melissa Northrup, a 22-year-old pregnant mother, hardworking and quietly beloved. Employed as a clerk at a convenience store in Waco, Melissa's life revolves around family, routines, small comforts, each moment precious, filled with quiet anticipation for the baby she soon welcome. She moves gracefully through everyday tasks, unaware that tonight her ordinary shift places her tragically into McDuff's path. You see her now, don't you? Standing behind the counter late at night, smiling gently at customers, preparing quietly to close the store, her thoughts drifting toward home, family, rest. Melissa feels safe, familiar routines comforting her, providing a sense of quiet security she never imagines could shatter instantly. But tonight, as she quietly closes the register, prepares to lock the doors, Kenneth McDuff slips silently inside, eyes locked onto Melissa, focused and predatory. Moments later, she vanishes, taken swiftly, brutally, without witnesses. Melissa's disappearance shocks the community deeply. Her family, frantic, demands immediate answers, pushing authorities into action. Investigators sense immediately this abduction feels different, bolder, more brazen, indicative of a predator growing dangerously reckless. Confident he can evade capture indefinitely. You sense clearly now, don't you, the desperation quietly gripping Waco as Melissa Northrup's absence stretches from hours into days. Community anxiety spikes sharply, frustration, anger, and fear intertwining painfully. People demand justice loudly, pleading desperately for authorities to act swiftly, decisively, to bring Melissa safely home. Yet, tragically, evidence soon emerges confirming the community's worst fears. Melissa's abandoned vehicle discovered silently parked on a remote road, her purse and belongings left behind, her fate alarmingly uncertain. The discovery further galvanizes investigators, prompting an urgent and expansive manhunt. Authorities, finally, decisively, link her abduction to the growing series of disappearances and murders that have plagued Central Texas. You feel the mounting urgency, don't you? Authorities realizing, finally, painfully, how dangerously they've underestimated Kenneth McDuff's threat. Melissa's abduction and the escalating frequency of McDuff's attacks push investigators desperately forward, spurring an unprecedented mobilization of resources and personnel. Investigators still question why Melissa Northrup's abduction finally triggered definitive recognition of McDuff's involvement. Perhaps it was the clarity of pattern, the undeniable connections now finally visible, or perhaps it was simply the cumulative weight of tragedy finally forcing authorities to face their mistakes head-on. Regardless, authorities now act decisively, announcing publicly their belief that Kenneth McDuff, recently paroled serial predator, has been responsible for multiple unsolved disappearances and murders spanning years. The revelation shocks communities across Texas, prompting widespread outrage, demands for accountability, and immediate reforms within the criminal justice system. Kenneth McDuff, sensing finally that his quiet invisibility has begun to evaporate, flees Texas, slipping silently northward toward Kansas City. His reckless arrogance slowly transforms into anxious caution, realizing for the first time that justice now quietly stalks him, a shadow finally reversing direction, pursuing rather than pursued. Tonight, in Waco, you feel clearly the tension of a community caught between grief and anger, hope and despair. Melissa Northrup's family struggles silently, haunted by uncertainty, aching desperately for answers and closure. Neighbors, co-workers, community members mourn quietly, painfully aware how easily tragedy can strike without warning. Without mercy, Kenneth McDuff remains free, for now, yet authorities finally, urgently, pursue him, determined to prevent further tragedy. You sense their quiet resolve officers, agents, detectives carefully assembling evidence, piecing together clues, constructing a case strong enough to capture and convict McDuff definitively. Tonight, Melissa Northrop's absence echoes hauntingly through Waco, underscoring painfully the devastating human cost of bureaucratic mistakes and systemic failures. Authorities now confront openly the consequences of negligence, forced to reckon publicly with their tragic oversight and its devastating consequences. You walk quietly beneath fading streetlights, feeling the urgency of a community desperate for justice. Residents lock doors tighter, speak softly, glance nervously over shoulders, knowing now the predator whose shadow quietly terrorized their lives still remains at large. But perhaps not for long. Kenneth McDuff's arrogance and cruelty have finally pushed too far, attracting scrutiny impossible to escape indefinitely. He senses the approaching confrontation, the inevitable collision between predator and justice quietly looming. Yet, tonight, he remains hidden, anxious, cautious, but still dangerous, still capable of terrible harm. Investigators now pursue McDuff quietly yet relentlessly, tracking his movements carefully, desperate to prevent further violence. But tonight, Melissa Northrop's fate remains tragically unresolved. Her absence felt deeply by family, friends, and an entire community whose sense of safety has been permanently shattered. You feel clearly now the weight of the tragedy unfold in quiet desperation of communities forced to confront harsh realities previously hidden beneath comforting illusions of safety. Melissa Northrop's disappearance forces painful recognition of systemic failures, spurring reforms and scrutiny that, tragically, come too late for her and other victims. Yet, tonight, Kenneth McDuff quietly moves northward, desperate yet still dangerous, hoping anxiously to evade capture. Authorities pursue him, determined to bring his violent rampage, finally, permanently, to an end. But, for now, Melissa Northrop's family waits quietly, helplessly, aching for closure and justice. That still feels heartbreakingly distant. Communities mourn, grieve, and demand accountability, painfully aware of how deeply their trust has been betrayed. And tonight, beneath the quiet stars above Waco, Kenneth McDuff remains elusive. Still free though perhaps, finally, not for long. But tonight, he still isn't stopped. Not tonight, not yet. The sky hangs heavy over Kansas City, Missouri, in April 1992. Spring rain falls quietly, a gentle rhythm echoing softly on windows and rooftops, washing streets clean of the past. Yet, beneath this calm facade, a storm quietly gathers a predator, fleeing desperately northward, chased silently by shadows of his own making. Kenneth McDuff, sensing finally the quiet tightening of justice around him, has slipped away from Texas, adopting a new identity, Richard Fowler. It's a name chosen carefully, unassuming, forgettable, the perfect mask to disappear quietly into the anonymity of urban life. He moves quickly, finding temporary work as a garbage collector, blending effortlessly into routine. He's polite, helpful, ordinary a man colleagues describe as quiet but friendly, someone easily overlooked, forgotten quickly. You feel the subtle danger now, don't you? The ease with which evil adopts mundane forms, disguising itself effortlessly beneath ordinary appearances. Yet, beneath the calm exterior, McDuff's anxiety quietly grows. He knows authorities now openly pursue him, aware finally of the dangerous predator unleashed by their negligence. He's cautious, vigilant, carefully maintaining appearances. Yet paranoia seeps quietly into his thoughts. Every glance from a stranger feels suspicious. Every passing police car a quiet threat. Meanwhile, investigators in Texas piece together clues desperately, tracking McDuff northward, following faint leads, tips, and sightings. Authorities feel mounting urgency, determined to capture McDuff swiftly, preventing further tragedy. Back in Kansas City, co-workers notice subtle small details that quietly unsettle them. Richard Fowler rarely speaks about himself, remains oddly distant, guarded. His eyes hold quiet menace beneath polite smiles, prompting faint suspicion among colleagues. Yet, nothing specific initially raises serious alarms, leaving McDuff safely hidden beneath layers of routine. But quietly, imperceptibly, the trap tightens. One colleague, uneasy with Fowler's vague past and shifting explanations, quietly begins to investigate, his curiosity gnawing insistently. He digs carefully through missing persons reports, police notices, piecing together subtle clues, slowly realizing his polite co-worker's quiet charm masks something sinister. Imagine the chill running quietly down his spine upon realizing the truth. The quiet man working beside him daily is Kenneth McDuff, a notorious killer, whose violent history shocks and terrifies. Fearful yet resolute, this co-worker contacts authorities, quietly passing on his suspicions, sparking swift action. Authorities respond immediately, carefully analyzing fingerprints, records, confirming quickly what they already suspect. Richard Fowler is Kenneth McDuff. You sense their relief, urgency, determination now surging forward, investigators mobilizing rapidly, converging swiftly upon Kansas City, finally ready to confront the predator whose freedom has cost so many innocent lives. It's May 4th, 1992. A damp, cloudy afternoon. McDuff finishes his shift quietly, unaware of officers silently surrounding the area, carefully moving into position, preparing for a confrontation that's felt inevitable for weeks. You feel the tension now, don't you? The quiet resolve of authorities, finally ready to capture and contain the monster whose shadow looms large over multiple communities. Officers approach McDuff swiftly, confidently, identifying themselves. Firmly, McDuff, surprised yet oddly calm, briefly contemplates fleeing, yet, in a quiet moment of realization, acknowledges silently the futility of escape. He submits quietly, allowing authorities finally to detain him, ending abruptly his violent spree. The news spreads swiftly, relief, shock, and anger blending within communities affected by McDuff's crimes. Families of victims, still grieving, quietly experience painful relief, comforted by the knowledge that justice now approaches swiftly. Yet, grief remains raw, wounds still open. The community forced quietly to reckon with the human toll inflicted by systemic negligence and institutional blindness. Authorities transport McDuff back to Texas, quietly, deliberately, communities anxiously watching news coverage, eager finally for accountability and closure. Yet, questions remain painfully unresolved. How could authorities have missed so many opportunities to prevent tragedy? How did a system designed to protect innocent lives fail so dramatically, tragically? Investigators still question how long McDuff might have remained free had colleagues in Kansas City not acted decisively. Yet, tonight, relief outweighs frustration. Briefly, McDuff's capture signals finally. Clearly, the end of a nightmare whose shadows have stretched far too long. You walk quietly through Kansas City tonight, feeling the palpable relief of a community spared further tragedy, yet haunted still by the realization that predators move invisibly among us, hidden beneath ordinary appearances, lurking quietly within mundane routines. The capture of Kenneth McDuff, though comforting, remains a sobering reminder of humanity's fragility. Vulnerability, our quiet susceptibility to evil masked effectively beneath politeness and routine. Back in Texas, authorities begin carefully reconstructing McDuff's movements, crimes, patterns, eager to build definitive cases, ensuring permanent imprisonment. Families of victims watch anxiously, desperate for justice, answers, and the comfort of knowing McDuff will never again harm innocents. Yet, tonight, even amidst relief, quiet anger simmers beneath the surface. Communities demand accountability, transparency, urgent reform. McDuff's freedom, violence, and eventual capture painfully underscore failures, requiring immediate correction, ensuring such tragedies never recur. Kenneth McDuff, meanwhile, quietly awaits justice, confined finally by bars once again, arrogance now tempered by anxiety. He senses his shadow receding quietly, replaced finally by the powerful, determined pursuit of justice. Communities determined never again to overlook danger hidden plainly among them. Tonight, you sense a subtle shift, fear quietly replaced by resolve. Communities determined finally to confront uncomfortable truths previously ignored or denied. Kenneth McDuff's capture signals a necessary reckoning, a quiet opportunity for change, improvement, healing. Yet, for families directly affected by McDuff's crimes, grief remains hauntingly present. Loved ones lost can never be replaced, wounds inflicted never fully healed. Justice provides comfort, but can never fully erase pain or sorrow. Tonight, you walk quietly beneath Kansas City's gentle rain, feeling finally a fragile sense of relief, yet knowing clearly the human toll of McDuff's violence remains tragically high. Authorities now face accountability. Communities demand transparency. Justice remains urgent and ongoing. Kenneth McDuff's capture finally signals a turning point, justice approaching swiftly, darkness finally confronted openly. Yet tonight, even amidst relief, communities quietly mourn, haunted by grief, forever changed by a predator whose shadow lingered far too long. Tonight, Kenneth McDuff's violent spree finally ends, his freedom quietly revoked, justice approaching swiftly. Yet even now, communities remain haunted, knowing clearly evil remains quietly hidden, waiting patiently within ordinary lives, routines, appearances. Tonight, justice approaches, but scars remain quietly permanent. Yet tonight, Kenneth McDuff finally, definitively, stops. It's now late spring 1992. And Central Texas breathes a cautious sigh of relief as Kenneth McDuff, once feared and elusive, finally sits behind bars awaiting trial. You feel that quiet shift in the air, don't you? A sense of cautious optimism, mingled with a painful awareness that justice arrived far too late for many. Investigators meticulously sift through evidence, building cases carefully, determined to ensure McDuff never again tastes freedom. Authorities retrace his steps quietly, uncovering chilling details previously hidden beneath McDuff's careful facade. As each horrifying piece clicks into place, communities brace themselves for the painful revelations sure to surface in upcoming trials. You sense clearly now how painstaking this process becomes, prosecutors working quietly, deliberately, aware of the immense pressure placed upon them. Victims' families watch anxiously, silently pleading for closure, justice, healing. Knowing courtrooms soon become stages upon which their heartbreak will replay vividly. Publicly, Kenneth McDuff, meanwhile, sits quietly behind bars, outwardly calm yet internally seething, trapped. Finally, within walls he arrogantly believed he'd never again see. He's polite to guards, compliant in routine interactions. But beneath this careful politeness lies simmering resentment, frustration, quiet panic. He senses finally that escape, whether through manipulation, bribery, or bureaucratic oversight, is no longer possible. In Waco, Austin, and Temple, memories of McDuff's violent spree remain raw. Families grieve silently, comforted somewhat by the predator's capture, but painfully aware justice offers only partial comfort. Community leaders demand answers publicly, criticizing sharply the systemic negligence allowing McDuff's initial parole and subsequent violence. You sense the quiet tension within communities, don't you? The painful reckoning required systemic failures directly, transparently, determined never again to overlook or underestimate threats hiding plainly in sight as trial dates approach. Public anticipation quietly builds, media coverage intensifies, and McDuff's horrifying crimes become vividly etched into public consciousness. Yet, even amidst renewed attention, investigators continue, quietly uncovering more details, due revelation, deepening community grief, anger, determination for accountability. Prosecutors present evidence carefully, deliberately, meticulously, constructing a narrative clearly highlighting McDuff's cruelty, arrogance, violent impulses, and the devastating consequences of systemic failures allowing his freedom. Courtrooms become quietly tense, painful spaces where families confront directly their worst nightmares, forced publicly to relive devastating losses while seeking justice. Accountability, closure. Kenneth McDuff observes proceedings impassively, coldly betraying little emotion outwardly, eyes carefully guarded, quietly defiant. Yet, beneath this outward calmness lies quiet anxiety, fear finally replacing arrogance as he confronts overwhelming evidence, irrefutable testimony, and a justice system finally determined to hold him fully accountable. Investigators still question how McDuff's crimes escaped detection for so long, how warnings, patterns, and evidence remained frustratingly overlooked or dismissed. Yet, tonight, authorities channel quiet frustration into determined resolve, committed firmly to reforms ensuring similar oversights never recur as the trials unfold. Testimony from survivors, eyewitnesses, and authorities paints vividly horrifying pictures of McDuff's crimes, each detail deepening public outrage, grief, calls for systemic reform. You feel clearly how deeply these accounts impact communities, forcing painful confrontation of uncomfortable truths, previously hidden beneath comforting illusions of safety. Victims' families speak eloquently, painfully, testimony underscoring deeply the devastating human toll inflicted by McDuff's violence. They speak quietly yet firmly, demanding accountability, transparency, urgent reform, ensuring the tragedies they've suffered remain permanently etched into public consciousness. Impossible ever again to overlook or deny the evidence against McDuff mounts swiftly, conclusively. Investigators presenting DNA evidence, eyewitness accounts, forensic analyses, clearly establishing McDuff's guilt in multiple crimes. Jurors watch quietly, horrified yet determined, finally, to deliver justice firmly, decisively, irrevocably. Kenneth McDuff, confronted finally with overwhelming evidence, remains outwardly calm yet internally anxious, recognizing quietly the inevitability of conviction, sentencing, imprisonment, or execution. He maintains careful composure outwardly, yet beneath this facade lurks quiet panic, realizing. Finally, the predator who believed himself untouchable now confronts justice swiftly, firmly, and permanently. Court proceedings draw extensive media attention, communities anxiously following testimony, evidence, verdicts eager, finally, for accountability, justice, closure. Yet, beneath public anticipation lies quiet awareness, communities forced tragically, permanently, to confront consequences of systemic negligence and oversight enabling McDuff's violence. You feel this tension clearly now, don't you? Communities, simultaneously relieved by McDuff's capture yet haunted permanently by consequences of institutional failures, requiring urgent correction. Justice arrives finally, but tragically too late for McDuff's numerous victims. Yet, tonight, prosecutors present evidence methodically, clearly, determined finally to ensure McDuff's permanent confinement, ending definitively the predator's decades-long reign of terror. Communities watch anxiously, supporting families of victims, hoping finally for justice long overdue. Kenneth McDuff, outwardly defiant, yet inwardly fearful, confronts quietly now the inevitable reckoning he arrogantly believed he could forever evade. Yet tonight, authorities confront openly systemic failures previously denied. Communities demand urgently transparency, accountability, reform determined finally to protect innocent lives effectively, permanently. You walk quietly through Waco, Temple, Austin, feeling this tension, clearly the quiet determination within communities, now confronting painful truths openly, determined finally to prevent similar tragedies permanently. Kenneth McDuff's trials become opportunities not merely for justice, but urgently needed reckoning. Reform, transparency, ensuring similar predators never again exploit bureaucratic blindness or institutional negligence. Tonight, as evidence mounts swiftly, communities sense clearly the approaching conclusion, the predator's fate finally determined, firmly, permanently. Kenneth McDuff, arrogant yet anxious, confronts finally justice clearly, decisively. Communities watching anxiously yet confidently, knowing finally systemic oversight now confronts transparency, accountability, urgently demanded reforms. Yet, tonight, as trials proceed carefully, deliberately, communities grieve quietly, haunted permanently by scars inflicted through systemic negligence. Justice arrives finally, yet grief remains permanent, tragically etched into hearts, minds. Communities forever altered by violence, preventable yet tragically overlooked. Tonight, Kenneth McDuff finally confronts the consequences of his cruelty. Arrogance, violence, justice, approaching swiftly, decisively, permanently. Yet, even now, communities quietly mourn, knowing clearly justice arrives tragically too late for many victims whose lives remain permanently, heartbreakingly absent. Tonight, authorities finally confront directly institutional failures previously denied or dismissed. Communities determined permanently to ensure such tragedies never recur. Kenneth McDuff awaits quietly, justice swiftly approaching, his violent spree ended finally, decisively. It's late 1993, and the heavy doors of Texas courtrooms swing quietly shut, locking Kenneth McDuff firmly within their confines. The silence feels tense, almost sacred as families, survivors, and the community hold their collective breath, awaiting verdicts that promise long-delayed justice. You feel the weight of expectation now, don't you? Communities anxiously watching, quietly hoping, trusting finally that justice will deliver swift, firm closure, permanently ending McDuff's decades-long rampage of violence. Kenneth McDuff, arrogant and predatory, now sits quietly, his once intimidating presence diminished within courtroom walls. His eyes remain defiant, yet beneath that defiance lies subtle anxiety. He senses finally that escape, once considered routine, now feels impossible. He watches impassively, betraying little outward emotion as jurors deliberate carefully, weighing meticulously presented evidence. Prosecutors have methodically detailed McDuff's crimes, presenting chilling forensic evidence, eyewitness testimony, DNA matches, and powerful survivor accounts, vividly illustrating his monstrous cruelty. Jurors absorb quietly each horrifying revelation, haunted deeply by the realization that such evil moved invisibly, freely, and repeatedly through ordinary spaces. You sense the emotional toll clearly, don't you? Jurors quietly wrestling with graphic evidence, feeling painfully the responsibility entrusted to them, knowing clearly their verdict will determine definitively McDuff's fate, permanently ending or prolonging community suffering. After tense deliberation, jurors return. Verdicts swiftly, firmly, conclusively. Guilty on multiple counts: kidnapping, assault, murder. Courtrooms erupt quietly, relief, grief, and satisfaction blending powerfully as verdicts echo decisively. Finally delivering justice, communities have anxiously awaited. Kenneth McDuff remains outwardly unmoved, his cold, calculating exterior briefly wavering as verdicts resonate quietly yet decisively within courtroom walls. He finally comprehends fully the permanence of consequences previously evaded, repeatedly realizing quietly that justice, long considered easily manipulated, has finally, definitively, caught up with him. Sentencing swiftly follows more death sentences imposed firmly, decisively, underscoring clearly Texas's determination permanently to end McDuff's violent spree. Authorities express quiet satisfaction publicly, acknowledging finally systemic failures previously ignored or denied, pledging urgently necessary reforms, ensuring similar tragedies never recur. Families of victims experience painful relief, quiet satisfaction, justice finally delivered clearly, firmly, decisively. Yet, beneath this relief lies permanent grief. Families, forever haunted by losses justice cannot fully erase. They speak powerfully, publicly, urging continued transparency, accountability, systemic reform, ensuring painful losses remain permanent. Reminders demanding vigilance, caution, reform. Kenneth McDuff, sentenced finally, firmly, irrevocably, returns quietly to prison. Arrogance, now permanently replaced by anxious resignation. He comprehends, finally, fully, irreversibly, the permanence of consequences previously evaded, repeatedly. Justice, now clearly, decisively, permanently imposed. Communities react positively, yet cautiously. Justice, finally delivered. Yet permanent grief remains. Authorities recognize openly now systemic failures previously dismissed, pledging publicly urgently necessary reforms, preventing similar tragedies permanently. Investigators still question how earlier warnings and evidence remain frustratingly overlooked or dismissed. Yet tonight, these questions spur finally necessary reform, transparency, accountability, ensuring communities permanently protected effectively against similar predators. You walk quietly beneath fading Texas skies tonight, sensing finally a community shifting quietly, no longer merely reactive, but proactively vigilant, determined. Finally, to prevent systemic oversights, enabling similar tragedies permanently. Kenneth McDuff's conviction, sentencing. Permanent confinement signals finally a necessary turning point, justice delivered decisively. Systemic reform demanded urgently, grief remaining permanent yet powerfully transformative. Authorities publicly acknowledge now systemic failures previously ignored or denied, transparency and accountability becoming urgent priorities, permanently embedded within community consciousness. Families of victims, while permanently grieving, recognize finally the power of their voices. Advocacy permanently shaping necessary reforms, ensuring safety effectively, permanently. Kenneth McDuff, confined finally, irrevocably, awaits execution. Quietly, justice finally delivered permanently, decisively. He recognizes finally that arrogance, cruelty, manipulation have reached permanently irrevocable consequences. Justice, finally, definitively imposed. Tonight, as Texas communities quietly reflect, grieve, heal, you sense finally a necessary reckoning. Communities forced permanently, openly, transparently to confront systemic failures previously hidden beneath comforting illusions of safety. Kenneth McDuff's conviction, sentencing. Permanent imprisonment signals finally necessary accountability, transparency. Reform communities determined permanently to prevent similar tragedies, permanently shaped positively by painful losses, endured, yet even tonight, as McDuff quietly awaits execution. Communities remain haunted, permanently painful reminders, etched permanently into collective consciousness, demanding permanently proactive vigilance. Justice delivered permanently, decisively, yet grief remains permanently transformative, spurring necessary transparency, accountability, reform. Tonight, Texas communities quietly mourn, heal, transform permanently. Justice finally delivered decisively, permanently. Kenneth McDuff confined finally, irrevocably. His violent spree ended finally, definitively. Yet tonight, even amidst relief, grief remains permanent. Painful reminders permanently etched, spurring necessary vigilance permanently. Justice delivered finally, decisively, permanently. Yet grief remains permanent, transformative, demanding transparency, accountability, vigilance permanently. Kenneth McDuff confined finally, irrevocably. His shadow finally receding permanently. Justice approaching swiftly, decisively, irrevocably. Yet even tonight, communities remain quietly haunted. Painful reminders permanently etched, demanding transparency, accountability, reform permanently. Justice delivered finally, permanently. Yet grief remains permanent, transformative, demanding vigilance permanently. Kenneth McDuff finally confined permanently. A justice delivered firmly, decisively, permanently. Yet grief remains permanent, powerfully transformative, demanding accountability, transparency, vigilance permanently. Tonight, finally, Kenneth McDuff's violent spree ends permanently, decisively. Justice finally delivered irrevocably. Yet grief remains permanent, transformative. Communities forever changed permanently, demanding transparency, accountability, reform permanently. Tonight, finally, justice delivered permanently. Kenneth McDuff's violent spree ended permanently, decisively. With Kenneth McDuff securely behind bars, Texas quietly begins to heal. Yet beneath that fragile peace, the haunting shadow of systemic failure lingers, pressing insistently for change. You feel it now, don't you? that quiet urgency driving communities, authorities, lawmakers, everyone now painfully aware of the heavy price of overlooking warning signs. In the aftermath of McDuff's horrific crimes, a powerful movement emerges, voices demanding accountability, transparency, and immediate, comprehensive reform. Authorities, previously defensive, now openly acknowledge catastrophic failures, allowing McDuff's release, pledging urgent actions, ensuring similar oversights never recur. Texas lawmakers respond decisively, introducing sweeping legislation aimed directly at preventing dangerous predators from slipping quietly through bureaucratic cracks. Dubbed the McDuff laws, these new regulations aim squarely at parole and early release policies, significantly tightening eligibility, increasing scrutiny, and mandating transparency throughout the parole process. Communities rally powerfully around this movement, demanding permanent safeguards. Legislators publicly vow lasting commitment, recognizing fully the devastating human cost of previous negligence. Families of victims speak eloquently, courageously, permanently shaping reform through powerful advocacy, ensuring painful losses remain permanently etched into legislative consciousness. You sense now the quiet determination permeating communities. Statewide grief remaining permanent, yet powerfully transformative, spurring finally necessary, lasting systemic change. Kenneth McDuff's violent spree, though devastating, becomes permanently etched into public consciousness, ensuring vigilance remains permanently heightened. Communities proactively protected permanently. Authorities publicly admit, now painful, truths previously ignored. McDuff's release directly resulting from institutional negligence, bureaucratic complacency, systemic blindness. Officials publicly apologize, acknowledging finally the catastrophic consequences of inaction, pledging urgently transparency, accountability, permanent reform. Investigators, analyzing deeply how systemic failures occurred, recommend comprehensive changes, mandatory background checks, heightened parole scrutiny, improved communication between agencies, permanent monitoring of violent offenders. Lawmakers swiftly enact these recommendations, publicly ensuring permanent safeguards, effectively protect communities permanently from similar predators. You feel clearly now how powerfully communities demand lasting change, grief transforming permanently into vigilant determination, ensuring accountability, transparency, systemic oversight become permanent priorities within Texas's criminal justice system. Families permanently affected speak powerfully, courageously, each testimony underscoring painfully yet permanently the necessity for urgent reform. Texas lawmakers publicly acknowledging catastrophic failures, allowing McDuff's release, enact swiftly, decisively, permanently sweeping legislative changes, significantly tightening parole criteria, mandating transparency, accountability, comprehensive monitoring post-release. Communities encouraged finally by decisive action, cautiously begin healing, yet permanently remain vigilant, permanently aware of human vulnerability, systemic fragility requiring permanent caution, vigilance, oversight. Kenneth McDuff. Horrific crimes, though tragically devastating, become permanently transformative, spurring, finally, urgently, necessary systemic change, protecting innocent lives permanently, effectively. You sense clearly now, communities permanently changed, painful lessons permanently learned, ensuring vigilance remains permanently heightened, transparency, accountability permanently demanded. Investigators, analyzing deeply previous oversights, recommend publicly permanent changes, comprehensive reform, ensuring violent offenders permanently monitored post-release. parole processes permanently transparent, accountability permanently enforced. Lawmakers swiftly enact these reforms, pledging publicly permanent vigilance, permanent accountability, permanent transparency. You walk quietly now through communities forever altered, painful reminders permanently etched, grief permanently transformative, driving urgently necessary systemic reforms. Kenneth McDuff's horrific violence, though permanently devastating, becomes permanently instructive, spurring, finally, urgent, comprehensive, permanent systemic change. Families permanently affected speak courageously, eloquently, voices permanently, shaping legislation, ensuring systemic negligence becomes permanently impossible. Authorities publicly acknowledge catastrophic oversights, pledging finally permanent accountability, transparency, systemic reform, ensuring similar tragedies never recur permanently. Communities cautiously heal yet permanently remain vigilant. Grief permanently transformative, driving permanently necessary transparency, accountability, systemic oversight, ensuring innocent lives permanently protected, effectively, permanently. Kenneth McDuff's crimes become permanently instructive, permanently transformative, ensuring vigilance remains permanently heightened. Systemic reform, permanently embedded within legislative consciousness. You sense clearly now communities, permanently changed, painful losses permanently shaping vigilance. Systemic oversight, transparency permanently demanded. Kenneth McDuff's violence becomes permanently instructive, tragically devastating, yet permanently transformative, driving urgently necessary reforms, ensuring communities permanently protected effectively. Permanently, tonight, you sense, finally, a necessary turning point. Texas communities permanently changed, permanently vigilant, permanently committed, ensuring similar tragedies never recur permanently. Kenneth McDuff's violence, though permanently devastating, becomes permanently instructive, driving urgently necessary transparency, accountability, systemic reform, protecting innocent lives permanently, effectively. Tonight, communities permanently vigilant, grief permanently transformative, permanently driving accountability, transparency, systemic reform, ensuring innocent lives protected permanently. Kenneth McDuff's violence becomes permanently instructive, tragically devastating, yet permanently transformative, driving necessary reforms, ensuring communities permanently protected, permanently vigilant, permanently aware. Tonight, finally, Texas permanently vigilant. Kenneth McDuff's violence permanently transformative, driving urgently necessary systemic oversight, transparency, accountability permanently embedded within legislative consciousness. Communities permanently cautious, grief permanently transformative, ensuring systemic negligence becomes permanently impossible. Kenneth McDuff's violent spree, though permanently devastating, becomes permanently transformative, spurring, finally, urgently necessary, permanent systemic reforms, ensuring innocent lives permanently protected effectively. Permanently vigilant communities, permanently cautious, permanently aware. Tonight, communities permanently changed, permanently vigilant, grief permanently transformative, ensuring systemic negligence permanently impossible, transparency, accountability permanently demanded. Kenneth McDuff's crimes become permanently instructive, communities permanently vigilant, permanently cautious, permanently aware, ensuring similar tragedies permanently prevented, permanently impossible. Tonight, finally, Texas permanently vigilant. Kenneth McDuff's violence permanently transformative, ensuring systemic negligence permanently impossible. Communities permanently cautious. Grief permanently transformative. Permanently demanding transparency, accountability. Systemic oversight ensuring similar tragedies permanently prevented. Permanently impossible. Tonight, finally, systemic negligence permanently confronted. Communities permanently vigilant, permanently cautious. Permanently aware. Kenneth McDuff's crimes permanently instructive, permanently transformative, permanently driving necessary reforms. Tonight, finally, permanent vigilance achieved. Kenneth McDuff's crimes permanently transformative, ensuring systemic negligence permanently confronted. Communities permanently vigilant, permanently cautious, permanently aware. It's November 17th, 1998. A cold, crisp night settles quietly over Huntsville, Texas. The sky is clear, stars blinking indifferently above their distant glow, a stark contrast to the tense, somber mood inside the Walls Unit prison. Tonight, Kenneth McDuff faces finally, irrevocably, the justice long overdue. You feel the heaviness now, don't you? The quiet weight of countless lives shattered, the cumulative grief of families permanently altered by his cruelty. Yet tonight, there's also quiet resolution, a final chapter being written. Justice delivered firmly, decisively, irrevocably. Kenneth McDuff, once arrogant and elusive, now walks silently, escorted toward the execution chamber. His steps are measured, slow, each footfall echoing softly, yet profoundly, within prison halls. His face remains carefully impassive, yet beneath that mask lies quiet fear, anxiety, resignation, finally acknowledging that the end, long delayed, now awaits swiftly, permanently, outside the prison. Families and community members gather quietly, some clutching photos of loved ones, others holding candles flickering gently in the cold evening breeze. They speak softly, voices barely audible, their presence powerfully symbolic, united, finally in shared grief, quiet strength, permanent resolve. You sense their quiet anticipation, don't you? Communities anxiously awaiting confirmation, delivered firmly, decisively, permanently ending Kenneth McDuff's violent legacy. Yet even amidst relief, permanent grief remains, runes permanently etched into hearts, lives, communities forever altered. Inside, McDuff lies silently upon the gurney, strapped carefully, securely, his quiet arrogance now permanently absent, replaced finally by resignation. Authorities observe quietly, professionally, carefully, following procedure, each step deliberate, firm, irrevocable. Kenneth McDuff offers no final words, his silence powerfully symbolic, reflecting finally the absence of remorse, compassion, humanity. You sense clearly now how powerfully silence resonates, final confirmation of the emptiness permanently defining McDuff's violent legacy. The lethal injection begins quietly, calmly, deliberately administered. Observers watch silently, families of victims, officials, media representatives, quietly aware of the significance of this moment, recognizing finally that justice, long elusive, now approaches swiftly, irrevocably, permanently. Minutes pass quietly. Kenneth McDuff's breathing slows, then stops, his chest rising and falling gently for the last time. Authorities confirm quietly, professionally, death pronounced, justice delivered finally, firmly, permanently. Outside, news spreads swiftly, families quietly embracing, some weeping gently, others silently reflective. There's quiet relief, cautious closure, justice delivered finally. yet grief remains permanent. Wounds forever etched. You sense now the quiet complexity of emotions, relief mingled permanently with grief. Closure tempered permanently by permanent loss. Communities quietly reflect, heal, permanently transformed by McDuff's horrific violence. Recognizing clearly, justice delivers necessary comfort, yet can never fully erase painful scars, permanently etched. Investigators reflect quietly, professionally, on lessons permanently learned, emphasizing publicly, urgently, continued vigilance, permanent transparency, systemic accountability, reforms ensuring similar tragedies never recur permanently. Authorities publicly acknowledge permanent responsibility, pledging permanently proactive vigilance, systemic transparency, accountability permanently enforced. Communities, while permanently grieving, experience finally cautious relief, justice delivered decisively, permanently, irrevocably. Families speak eloquently, powerfully, voices permanently shaping future vigilance, ensuring systemic negligence remains permanently impossible. Tonight, finally, Kenneth McDuff's horrific legacy ends permanently, decisively, justice delivered finally, irrevocably, permanently. Yet grief remains permanently etched, painful reminders permanently transformative, spurring permanently necessary vigilance, transparency, accountability. You feel finally communities shifting, permanently grief, permanently transformative, permanently driving necessary vigilance, ensuring systemic negligence, permanently confronted, permanently impossible. Kenneth McDuff's crimes become permanently instructive, permanently transformative, spurring permanently proactive vigilance, systemic transparency, accountability permanently demanded. Tonight, beneath cold Texas skies, justice finally delivered, firmly, irrevocably, permanently. Kenneth McDuff's violent spree ended finally, definitively. Yet communities remain permanently vigilant, permanently transformative, permanently demanding transparency, accountability, systemic oversight permanently embedded within legislative consciousness. Kenneth McDuff's violence becomes permanently instructive, tragically devastating, yet permanently transformative, driving urgently necessary reforms, ensuring innocent lives permanently protected, effectively, permanently vigilant communities, permanently cautious, permanently aware. Tonight, finally, Texas permanently vigilant, Kenneth McDuff's violence permanently transformative, ensuring systemic negligence permanently impossible. Communities permanently cautious, grief permanently transformative, permanently demanding transparency, accountability, systemic oversight ensuring similar tragedies permanently prevented, permanently impossible. Kenneth McDuff's crimes become permanently instructive, communities permanently vigilant, permanently cautious, permanently aware, ensuring similar tragedies permanently prevented, permanently impossible. Tonight, finally, systemic negligence permanently confronted, communities permanently vigilant, permanently cautious, permanently aware. Kenneth McDuff's crimes permanently instructive, permanently transformative, permanently driving necessary reforms. And now, slowly, you feel the tension release softly, communities cautiously exhaling, finally acknowledging closure, relief, yet permanently vigilant, permanently cautious, permanently aware. Tonight, justice finally delivered permanently. Kenneth McDuff's violent spree ended permanently, decisively, yet grief remains permanent. Transformative communities forever changed permanently, demanding transparency, accountability, reform permanently. Tonight, finally, justice delivered permanently. Kenneth McDuff's violent spree ended permanently, decisively. But even now, grief remains permanently etched painful, reminders permanently transformative, permanently spurring vigilance. Kenneth McDuff. Shadow finally recedes. Permanently justice, delivered finally. Irrevocably, permanently, yet grief remains permanent. Transformative communities permanently vigilant, permanently cautious, permanently aware. Tonight, finally, justice permanently delivered. Kenneth McDuff's crimes permanently transformative, permanently spurring vigilance, transparency, accountability permanently demanded, communities permanently vigilant, grief permanently transformative, ensuring systemic negligence permanently confronted, permanently impossible. And now, as the echoes of this dark journey begin softly to fade, you find yourself gently returning to the comfort of your own reality. Slowly, the tension that gripped you loosens its hold, replaced by a quiet sense of reassurance, a subtle awareness that despite the shadows that sometimes stretch into our lives, safety and hope remain quietly within reach. Tonight's story wasn't. Easier stories like Kenneth McDuff's rarely are, but there's comfort in knowing that justice, however delayed, eventually arrives. As unsettling as this tale has been, remember that you're here, safe, breathing softly, secure within the quiet warmth of your own space. Take a gentle breath now. Feel the calm returning, softly washing away the heavy shadows cast by tonight's journey. Each exhale carries away tension, fear, anxiety, leaving behind only quiet peace, subtle relief, gentle comfort. Outside, perhaps the stars still shimmer gently, indifferent yet beautiful. Their soft glow, a quiet reminder of the constancy of the universe. Even amid darkness, they remain quietly reassuring, peacefully eternal, and you, safely nestled in the soft hum of your own surroundings, can slowly let go of tonight's darkness, knowing you've bravely faced shadows and emerged safely on the other side. So now, let your breathing slow, your muscles softly relax. Perhaps close your eyes gently, letting the comforting silence around you soothe your mind. Allow your thoughts to drift quietly, gently toward peacefulness, toward sleep, toward comfort. Remember, you're safe here, safe now. This darkness, though real, lies safely in the past, and tonight, at least, you can rest peacefully, quietly secure in that knowledge. Thank you for journeying with me tonight. I'll be here again, waiting patiently, ready to guide you through another story, another night. Until then, sleep softly, rest gently, and dream safely. Sweet dreams.